how do you communicate in a high trust category, or what is the voice that you use to bring in assurance and things?
If the parent says, I don't want my child's pictures on social, we don't even circulate those pictures internally. So if you see a hinge, there is what we call a finger guard on every door's hinge till a child's height. We ensure there is no door which
Hyperlocal, and how much of hyperlocal do you consider when you are marketing? Given the fact that you're 170 across the country.
It's a very interesting question because one core insight for me was parents want physical experiences for their children.
So give me an example of what happens behind the scene, what a parent doesn't see.
What a parent doesn't see is how at 6 a.m. our head of IT logs in every day to ensure every single camera in each of these 170 centers is working.
How does this get communicated to a parent? Because this is a business where your customer is the parent and your user is the child,
right? So for a parent, the peace of mind or the lack of guilt, I would say, especially for a working mom, there's a lot of guilt in there, right? 85% of the brain develops in the first 5 years of a human being, right? I had not in my entire life thought I would be doing that.
Hello and welcome to Iconic Brand Stories. I'm Tina and I'm the founder of Pink Lemonade. Over the years, I've had the privilege of working with lots of brands where we've unpacked unique stories, looked at bold moves, and also sometimes things that haven't worked for brands. This is a podcast about pulling the curtain back on the brands we admire, looking at their glossy campaigns and the risky moves, as well as quiet pivots. We are here to get curious about what makes these brands tick, as well as have some fun on the way. So, if you are a brand owner, a marketer, or simply enjoy the world of branding and marketing, you're at the right place. Today, I'm thrilled to kick off things with Shireen Sultana, the marketing head of Klay Schools. Klay has a unique space in the preschool landscape, blending care, education, and corporate partnerships into a brand that today Shireen is shaping very successfully. Welcome, Shireen, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me over, Tina. I'm super excited about this conversation and to share the space with someone who's built so many brands through Pink Lemonade.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you as well. So, why don't we get started with your journey at Klay?
So mine's been an unusual entry into the field of marketing for early years because I did not come from a marketing role straight into Klay. I came in as an erstwhile founder. So I was building for the last almost 8 years. I was building a startup in the early years space. It's called Kinderpass. And once I was looking to move on and exit Kinderpass, I started to think what my last many years have been all about, right? So it's been about building something in the earlier space, developing insights, understanding Indian parents and their behaviors and their challenges from up close and personal. So that's what brought me to Klay.
And that was the massive years of perspective that you brought into Klay. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Also, it comes from my own experience as a parent, right? I have a 12-year, my son's now 12, but
Okay.
having been through that phase of trying to decide on not just schooling and learning in the early years, but equal amounts of focus on development, challenges that as a parent as a working parent, I have seen. So
Yes.
bringing all of that to Klay was something that seemed very exciting, and that's why I'm here.
And tell me, what when you came into Klay, what did you think about how the brand was representing itself? What is its storytelling today? What are the experiences it's creating?
So Klay, as you might know, was started by Priya, and Priya wanted to help women come back to work, right? So this was for returning to work moms who had young children and didn't want to leave them home, didn't want to rely on a nanny. They also wanted a great environment for their children. It's not just about care, but about learning and development. And I'm sure you've
Sure.
heard this often enough about how 85% of the brain develops in the first 5 years of a
Absolutely.
human being, right?
Yeah.
So those critical years, you want the best possible care, an environment that fosters their curiosity, their ability to learn, and helps them.
Absolutely.
They're sponges at that age, so you want that environment, and that's what Priya started out with. Over the years, Klay has come to stand for a lot more than care. Right. And when I came in, I think one of the biggest challenges that as a brand we are we are trying to overcome today, or it's I would say it's an opportunity for us, is to, as families evolve, as parenting in itself evolves, and as children of course evolve in today's
Mm-hmm.
digital first era,
Yeah.
our endeavor is to make the early years the most happening time, make it the most productive for not just the child but for the parent, because you remove a lot of that guilt that comes with being a
Absolutely,
working
yes.
parent.
Oh, that's massive.
And with the different kinds of families, right, while families, as we know, are changing, their needs are changing, parents are getting more and more aware, more and more involved in the parenting process, and therefore with it comes a lot of the what ifs, and a lot of factors that they want to evaluate the early years of their child with. And
That
that's, I think, where we stand today.
That's absolutely, that's wonderful that you are looking at it so deeply, because this is a very high trust category. You are, your most precious child is being left in the care of someone else, and at the same time, you're looking for not just care, but you're looking for development as well. So, how does a brand like yours communicate this? How do you communicate in a high trust category, or what is the voice that you use to bring in assurance and things?
That's a very good question, Tina, because it is not. It's a tightrope we walk almost every day, right? Because on one end, to operate at the scale that we do, right? So Clay today has about 170 centers. We're in
Yes.
almost 20 cities now. We have 12,000 children in our schools, and we've had about 70,000 odd families that have worked with us over the many years, right?
Over the last 13 years?
13 years,
Oh,
yes,
wow.
13 years with
Oh,
2 years
wow.
of the pandemic in the middle. So
Yes.
it was like a phoenix rising from the ashes for us all over again. So, in the midst of all of that, for us at that scale, it is important to ensure operational efficiency, important to ensure service delivery is at par with what parents come in, if not, beyond that, come in expecting from a brand like Clay. But at the same time, like you very rightly mentioned, it is a high trust, high touch category, so
Yes.
every moment of interaction with the brand, outside the center, in the center, and while they're
Yes.
taking the child away as well, needs to be
Thought through.
trustworthy, needs to
Yes.
be thought through absolutely, and needs to deliver the same standard across all of these locations.
Yes, very
Some of
much.
the ways that we do that is, while there are, what the parent sees is a trustworthy, loving, caring caregiver, teacher, center director, facilitator, the entire center staff, but what happens on the back end is really where we do the efficiency. So the parent still continues to see that human touch, that human self, whereas behind the scenes is really where the
The
gears are
process
cranking
is,
and the
yeah.
service delivery is being standardized.
So give me an example of what happens behind the scenes, what a parent doesn't see.
What a parent doesn't see is how at 6 a.m. our head of IT logs in every day to ensure every single camera in each of these 170
Oh,
centers is
nice.
working.
Yes.
What happens is that every door that a child has access to, right? We ensure, if you see the hinges, right? The potential
Safety.
accident
Yeah.
points, or hazard points that any parent would not have thought of also are covered at Clay. So if you see a hinge, there is what we call a finger guard on every door's hinge till a child's height on both sides of the door. We ensure there is no door which doesn't have a see-through glass, so that we at any given point in time know if there's a child, lurking behind the door just to shock you but doesn't get hurt.
Oh.
We what happens behind the scenes is every week there is a proper fumigation, cleaning, checks, all of that is done. There is a health and safety audit. We have a whole team that just does this. There's a health and safety audit team that does checks through the year. What also happens is we have nutrition a team of folks working on the nutritional values of the meals that happen. Freshly made
Oh.
meals are brought to children at every break.
So, it just makes me wonder, how do you manage the human touch with so many SOPs at the back end, and so much that is, operationally needed to be taken care of, and you have 170 centers. So, doesn't it become clinical at some point in time? How do you
It
maintain the
There is the risk
personalization?
of that. I
Yeah.
totally agree with you, but I think what has happened very organically at Clay is the child has continued to stay at the center of the universe for us, right? So for us, it is all about, is this great for the child? I wouldn't even say good. Is this great for the child? Is this safe for the child? Is this the best that the child can get? Right, and everything else falls in place behind that single mindedness that we operate with. So while the SOPs are there, the SOPs are not there to make a parent's life difficult. It is to say that, am I doing the best I
Doing better
can?
for the child.
And I've seen that happen. I have many members in my own team who bring their children to Clay, right?
Okay.
And someone who's just joined recently, and she's a mom of an 11-month-old, and she was going to another daycare service earlier, and she comes back, and every day she tells me, I cannot thank the universe enough, because I love how they care for her child. It's called Arav. How they care for Arav. I mean, if he's, even as much as I wouldn't have noticed a mosquito bite, but his teacher will tell me, hey, listen, he has a mosquito bite there, and I think you should take him home and put some cream,
Oh.
because he came in with this morning, and we did what we could. So it is that delight, it is that care that the parents see, which helps us continue to say that, okay, while there is a process to ensure there is things run seamlessly, things run uniformly across all our centers, it still comes down to the child, and then as an extension the parent. And I
So
think.
how, lots of questions emerging. First of
Hmm.
all, fantastic insights being, details being given by you. How does this get communicated to a parent? Because, this is a business where your customer is the parent and
Yeah.
your user is the child, or the person experiencing the service is the child. In some ways, the parent as well, I get it.
Yeah,
But
no,
how do you?
that's a very valid point, because while it's the same consumer versus customer problem that a lot of
Yes.
brands have, right? Um, Today for us, I think, while till the child enters, or a family enters a center, we are talking to the parent, we are communicating the benefits to a parent, what Clay can do to a child. But once the child has entered the center, the premises, you will see a very significant shift in what the comms look like, speak, everything, right? So once you walk into a center, you will not see the word Clay or the brand Clay beyond the reception,
Okay.
right? Because all you will hear and see is things that a child is looking to learn. So there is a set of characters we have called Sid and Sonia, right? And these
Okay.
are young children,
Like
obviously
mascots.
toddlers, like mascots.
Yeah.
And all our notebooks, all our in center branding is just these two talking to the children,
Ah.
right? And that's how we try to balance it. It's not an easy one, because parents, for me, the bigger challenge is when we are talking to parents, is you're also being compared against many other players.
Of course.
For a parent, it is at the end of the day, till you talk about the fact that safety is so important, and what we do on the front of safety, or that how curriculum really matters, how what is being done in the classroom
Hmm.
on an everyday basis, how much hands on play are they getting, what kind of ways are you balancing really numeracy, literacy, and all other life skills, 21st century
Yes.
skills, higher order thinking. All of
Hmm.
this is stuff that we want to tell a parent and convince them, because that's really a differentiator. Unfortunately, parents don't even know, and I can tell you this as having been a parent myself, as to what I should be looking for. The only markers in early years that parents think are important is safety. What is a teacher child ratio? How many cameras are there? What are you feeding my child?
Sure.
Versus saying, you know, how how much is my child learning, and how strong is the foundation that you're laying for his or her future going to be? Is this going to be a whole child, a socially, emotionally healthy child,
Okay.
right?
So, one question out of the Sid and Sonia that you're talking about, the child can't read at that age. So, is this audio enabled in some way?
Not audio yet. I like that idea very much. But right at this point, no, it's not audio enabled. It is visuals that we use. We use basic keywords that we know that children are also,
Or
at K1,
actions?
K2. So we have from 6 months to 6 years of age, right?
Okay.
So from 2.5, 3 children start to read with by sight. So a
Okay.
lot of those things we reinforce as well. So messages like, we have in the dining area, we actually have a plate of a visual which shows what are the right proportions of your plate,
Okay.
like it's like hugely blown out
Okay.
in proportion. So that we are reinforcing a lot of this, where Sid and Sonia are pointing to the plate, for instance.
Sure.
So a lot of these are visual cues that
Cues
we give.
to tell the child.
Yeah,
But I'm surprised at what you're saying about parents knowing about a few areas or few markers, because I thought today's parent is very evolved as well.
yeah.
And so, what are the changes you've seen in today's parents, mothers, especially because they still continue to be the larger set that works with children at that age? So, what do you find in terms of their asks, their demands as customers, and how do you speak to them?
What's interesting, and I've seen that evolve over the last 8 to 10 years, having been in this industry, right? Is our what we thought was a primarily a mother-led job. Like it's the primary responsibility of a mom. has changed quite significantly. So I have had parents, dads who know exactly how many letters of the alphabet my child knows versus 20 years ago. I mean, I would ask a colleague, hey, what grade is your kid? And he's like, शायद सेवेंथ में है या फिफ्थ में
I'm
है
not
मैं भूल गया.
surprised.
I'm like,
I'm not
okay, so
surprised.
that's the shift I've seen, right?
That's very
And
nice.
it's very heartening to see how involved dads are. So that's a shift. What is also interesting to see is as social norms are evolving, right? The definitions of families themselves have changed. So
Yes.
we have a lot of single parents, we have same sex parents, and
Interesting.
really, and some of them are probably our strongest advocates because if you're a single parent, you need all the support system you can get to bring your child up and in the right way that you'd want to.
Yes.
So for some of them, Clay does play a very strong pivotal role in their parenting journey. And of course, we take immense pride in being able to support something like that. So that change I see, you're right, very involved parents, but like I said, awareness is different from the levels of involvement, right? What neuroscience in the of the early years is still fairly
Nascent.
nascent and
Yeah.
fairly undiscovered for an average bloke like me. So I think that's where brands like us should play a far stronger role in building awareness, in building education about early years, and being able to identify developmental delays in early years. So.
See, while we are saying the parents are evolved, there is there are some things that don't change. For example, everybody would want peace of mind for
Hmm.
when you leave your child in the care of someone
Yeah.
else. So, what do you market? Is it peace of mind or development?
What we market is a bit of both, I would say, but primarily for a parent, right? I don't think they're two separate questions to answer. Where does your peace of mind come from, right? In not knowing, it's not just knowing my child is in a safe space, physical safe space. It is also about knowing that my child is getting that enriching environment that they need at this stage, right? So for a parent, the peace of mind or the lack of guilt, I would say, especially for a
Yes,
working
that's a
mom,
big one.
there's a lot of guilt in there, right? So that comes from not just the physical security, but also that stimulating environment that, imagine the joy of a parent when you pick up your kid, go home and discover that he or she's
Yes,
learned like a few new words,
yes.
actually understands, is able to read maybe something of the newspaper, like a word of the newspaper. So those are really happy moments for a parent. And I think that's what we are here for. It is not just the safety. It is to say that my child is getting the best that they can every day.
And you think that's the difference Clay is bringing? Do other preschools do this?
I would say
Or
almost all preschools are meant to do this. The
meant to do
way
this?
they
Yes.
do it and how they do it changes. And I'd also like to bring to everyone's attention something here, that a lot of preschools in India, right, the big chains also are largely franchise models, right? What that means is there is somebody else entirely running that show every day, right? That preschool is or daycare is being run by someone whose skin is in the game, yes, but there is a profit motive which is probably primarily driving them. There is a brand
Sure.
behind it. There is, I'm sure, an SOP, a curriculum, etc. But at Clay, the difference is all our 170 centers are run by Clay,
Mm.
right? We are a CoCo model, and we continue to stay so very strongly because for us, while challenges that come with franchising models in any business stay with us as well, right? We can't scale as fast as we'd like to. Uh, so those are the things that we live
Yes.
with. But why we would probably never go down that path is because what we stand for then starts to get diluted,
And you'd
right?
lose control
We
over.
absolutely lose control. Today, any parent can walk into any clay in the
Mm.
country, and we have a lot of that because we have a huge chunk of corporate families, right? So everyone who's moving, say, has a transfer, the family is moving, they know very well that I walk into any clay center in the city that I've moved to, I will get pretty much the same experience.
That's very
My child will
nice.
get the same environment, the same curriculum, everything. Nothing really changes. Maybe the food is more localized to the palate and the cuisine, and
Mm.
the seasonality of that region. That's about the only change you'll see.
Sure. So let's delve a little bit into this company owned, company operated. What does it leave you with as somebody who looks after the brand and marketing? What is your onus and what are the challenges you see when there are, both franchise model and CoCo model would have their pros and
Sure.
cons.
Yeah.
Tell me from the brand point of view.
So from the brand point of view, obviously locus of control sits with us, so that makes it very, I won't say easy, but it's far more consistent. The experience is in your control. What you're saying, how you're saying, and who's saying that for your brand stays in your control, right? But the flip side is also there where we know that it means so much more effort and work that comes from just one central team. So my team's now about 35 people,
Oh, wow.
right? And which also means the customer support, the customer care, digital marketing, partnerships. So all of that is our responsibility to get brand Clay out there to the right set of people. So that therefore means your marketing dollars are only getting
Increasing.
fractionalized like that, because when you bring a franchisee, there is also the money skin in the game that they bring in, right?
Mhm.
And there's also so much more word of mouth and so much more money going behind it.
Operations
So
as well, right? They would take
operationally,
care
yeah.
of all
So
of
from a
those.
brand standpoint, therefore it's a double-edged sword, I would say. But I'd any day pick our current model because it means that I know for a fact that I can stand for what's happening at centers. I can vouch for what's happening. And if something is not to a parent's liking, changing that or intervening and supporting is absolutely in our control.
Can you give me an example of something like a crisis communication if you're saying everything is centralized? Something that you might have had to quickly put together and roll out, and it went out in all centers, 170 centers.
It happens all the time. I mean, when you have things like the viruses, like sudden
Ah,
virus spread or hand and foot mouth disease, we now know what time of year that's going to happen. So there's a
okay.
lot of preemptive comms. But from a crisis communication standpoint, so the last virus attack that happened, right, where it was spreading very quickly among children and senior citizens, right, we wanted to parents were hitting panic mode, whether like should I send my child to school or not. The morning calls at our support customer support center went through the roof. People are like, other schools open, what are you doing? Because there was so much noise in the media overnight about this. So we instantly had to draft comms for parents, put them out at centers, send it out on email, WhatsApp, across all 12,000. Prep the IVR to say if you have questions, people calling in with questions, these are the FAQs you need to handle. So that's one. I wouldn't call it crisis, but we would like to be prepared for something like this,
Sure.
and that happens fairly often, I would say. Every time there's a scare, a health scare especially for
Yeah.
children, we get into action.
That's interesting. And how does this impact your communication with corporates? I've often wondered, are you talking to corporate customers different than you're talking to retail customers?
We definitely are. It's like a B2B slash B2C approach, right?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, the corporates have a different reason to believe in brand play, right? For an end user, it is about the experience, it is about safety, it's about the curriculum, it's about what
Mm.
the child is learning. But for a corporate, it is about how reliable is this brand in my time of need? Is this the brand that I want to lean on to, right? And who's the player? There's of course the price and all of those aspects, but if I mean, for instance, Google, JP Morgan Chase, some of these are our biggest clients,
Mm.
right? For them, it's a no brainer that every time they open a
A new
childcare
play.
support
Yeah.
in a new area,
Mm.
childcare support comes from Clear.
Mm.
And for them, therefore, the trust markers are very different. It is to say that when I want to open a center, is everything sorted? Have they thought things through for my parents or my employees and their children and things like that? As well as that, do I want to be affiliated with a brand that stands for trust and loyalty? Absolutely, yes. Do I want Google or someone like a Google or a JP Morgan Chase or an Optum India will want to be associated with a brand that stands for the values that they stand for?
Mm. Yes.
Employee centricity, family friendliness, workplaces of the future. All of these are themes they'd want their partner brands to also resonate with. And I think that's where our communication definitely is different. Also, the modus operandi and the terms of engagement are also very different. So
Do you do more B2B or do you do more B2C today?
at this point, we're more B2B, but that's
B2B?
one
Wow.
of the things that we're looking to change because we also know that while Clay has been a very well-known childcare brand, as the fact that we are a great preschool is something only parents who have been within Clay are well aware of and always vouch for, stand for. Like if you go to
Sure.
any center's Google reviews, you will see a lot of parents talking about it. In my team and my challenge this year is to make that a mainstream conversation to say that, hey, when I'm considering preschools, Clay is one of my top three choices. That's really the North Star my team and I are going for, right? And so the ratio between B2B and B2C is what we would like to sort of balance a little bit more.
Yeah.
Currently, we are very corporate heavy, yes.
You're very corporate heavy. So the chunk of the students or the children are from corporate engagements?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how does that leave you with respect to freedom to do your different kinds of activities that you want to do in terms of either media presence or communication, your marketing? Do the corporates actually, are they stringent about the fact because the maximum bulk comes from them?
Not really. It's not the bulk to begin with, but what's great is that while the corporates know, who we are, I think usually the way this thing works is it's about the dynamic, right? When you are as a player have your own standing in the market, when people know you as a respected, trustworthy brand, your corporate partners also stand to respect you for just that, right? They the situations that you're talking about is where I think the balance of equation or power is a bit
Power
tilted.
equation changes, but I've also seen that if there is a deficiency in the experience or there
Yeah,
is a drop in
very true.
service.
Very true. Absolutely. Which is not the case with us. Like a lot of our corporate partners. I mean, recently we were hosting an event in Gurgaon around this, and some of the corporate partners came to the fore talking about why they would every single day trust Clay over anybody else in this space. Because,
Mm,
and that's I think why they trust us to know to do what is right for the children, right for the parents, right? For them, it's their employees, and
mm.
by extension, the employees' children. So that trust factor in what we communicate also stays strong. So it's not I wouldn't complain about it as a head of marketing to say that corporates interfere with what we want to say. Yes, they do have their confidentiality elements, but that's something we as a brand always do. So for example, if I'm shooting pictures of say what
The
we call reflections, right, the annual day event,
huh.
we only post it on any of our socials after having taken permission from each parent.
Ah.
So otherwise, if the parent says I don't want my child's pictures on social, we don't even circulate those pictures internally,
Oh, that's a
right? So we're
big
very
one.
very and that I mean
12,000 children to make
yeah.
sure you're doing that is that itself is a
It
massive
is a
task for some
hard
of your
one,
team
and we
members.
so our center teams ensure they have permissions from parents before we share any pictures ahead on.
Okay.
And I'm not even talking about using it for advertising. I'm just talking about putting it on our socials,
What about
right?
data collection from these children? Because are you all collecting data for your analytics purposes from, child's likes, dislikes, developmental markers,
That is
etc.?
something we're working on. To be very honest, we've not done a, we there was that's why the corporates will probably play a bit of a role because they're very particular about data confidentiality,
Exactly,
and we
exactly.
also adhere to a lot of those norms because at the end of the day, especially when it comes to children's data, we're very very careful. We don't capture data that is not absolutely essential. For instance, we have health records as a whole. We do a very thorough child's health and personal record
Sure,
activity. Like an hour is spent with the parents just taking down everything about the child.
sure.
We've not so far indulged in digitizing it for the reason that we felt we want to see how we can use this effectively to make the child's life better and the parents life better. And now we're in the process of sort of working on bringing in some healthcare partners to help this happen.
Okay,
And
okay,
that this year's focus, I mean, the FI has just begun, so this year's focus is really digitizing a lot of what we processes, digitizing to the effect that makes parents lives better,
interesting.
in and more informed
Yep.
and more I would say involved, yet through data, right? So those are the few endeavors we are on.
How do you use this data to determine where your next center is going to be? Do you at all?
That's a very good question because that's something we've been talking about using some sort of geospatial tools
Hmm.
to figure out where our next center should be. At this point, because we also have our corporate clients and our approach has been primarily focused on them. And now that we're switching to more retail and preschool positioning, we two parts, right? One is for the corporate clients, there is a compliance adherence that is required, which means that the nearest center needs to be from the place of work about either 500 meters to 1000 meters distance, right? So from that perspective, we know where our next centers can and should be for the corporate clients. For retail parents, there's a lot more markers that we are trying to
Yes.
build in,
Hmm.
which is to say, can I look at apartment complexes with maybe 500 or more apartments? Can I look at brands that are kids clothing brands, kids footwear brands focused on children, right? Or someone like a tutoring platform like a QMath, etc., to
Yes.
say that do they have
Hmm.
centers? That'll give me a great idea of what the population skew around these ages looks like.
And if those brands are thriving there, then there are good enough reasons that your brand
Absolutely,
can thrive there. So that's a
absolutely
good
right.
one to piggyback on.
For now, it's that. I would love for it to be more scientific, but again, this year we've gotten a few key people in the team, the leadership as well, to work on making real estate a little bit more efficient. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. That's very nice. You just mentioned that you're looking at shifting the positioning from daycare to preschool. What has constituted this change for the retail customer? I'm assuming you're
It's
saying
really organic, to be honest, because so there is a legacy, right? I mean, Clay was started as a daycare. As a daycare brand, right? It was for returning to
it
work
was for
moms,
yes,
and then eventually became like family support. And in that transition, what we realized, like I said, the child is and has always been the center of our universe. So what we also noticed is, just providing that safe environment is not enough. This is the critical years, all of the neurological bits that I
yes,
told you
yes,
about, right?
absolutely.
And that's when we said, hey, you know what? Schooling is what parents understand this as. Schooling is what we think the child needs. At the end of the day, for a parent at the age of 6, when the child turns 6, is my child grade school ready or not? Is she going to thrive when they go to their first big school, as it's called, right? And that's really where this whole preparedness to say yes, your child can. And it's not about, do they know the alphabet, can they count up to 100 and things like that,
Mm.
or do they know the colors, etc. No, it's not about that. It's to say, is my child independent enough? Is my child able to articulate enough for their age? Is he or she getting the fundamental building blocks on their cognitive skills, their physical skills, their fine motor skills, their social emotional learning? Are those building blocks in place or not? And that's really what a preschool is meant to do. So it's been a very, I wouldn't say it's a positioning. So positioning from a communication standpoint is what we're trying, but we've always been this. Clay has always been this. It's just that we've probably never put concerted effort into talking about us being this, and
Mm.
that's really where
Mm.
my
Shift is
effort and
going
my
to
team's
be.
effort is going to
Mm.
be. Yeah.
I hear this because it's very natural, and that's how we spoke about the evolved parent, the involved parent. I think they want care for the child, but they also want the development very clearly today because they're not willing to take just one of those.
Because it's a window of about 5 to 6 years. You want to make the most of that window in building that foundation for your child.
Yeah. Tell me, when you have an experience, when parents have experiences with the brand, and they clearly seem to be having very wholesome, holistic experiences, is then word of mouth very good? Is referral the highest source of discovery, or are there other sources that you use or depend on today?
There are multiple sources. Yes, referral is great. Word of mouth is something that we've experienced, which is fairly strong for us. In fact, interestingly, like because I'm a Nurse 12 founder, in the founder communities, when I bring it up and when I'm working, almost everybody I know seems to have sent their child to Clay, or has a child in Clay, or has a child who's passed out of Clay. So it's very
Really?
heartening to hear that. Oh
That's
yes,
really
yeah,
high.
yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm alumna, and we have a huge community of I'm women, and almost everyone I seem to speak to says, "Oh, you know what? I mean, I have very fond memories of Clay." So I haven't heard someone come to me and say, "Yeah, it was okay," or "It was subpar," or "It was not what I expected." I've only heard people say lovely things, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
which therefore means that there is a very strong equity that we've built over time. That is translating to word of mouth as well. But again, as we are growing and we're looking to open about 50 centers, 40 to 50 centers this year, right? Backing on or relying on word of mouth alone is not really going to help us get there. So which is where my team and I come in, right? Because we do work on building a lot of digital presence. We're looking
Mm-hmm.
at increasing brand awareness, especially in the right context of learning and development and not just care, right? So early childhood care and development and learning is
What do
what
you
I
do?
want to
Tell me
do.
some of the strategies that you're using digitally.
So right now we're working on building like a whole community-led approach. We were reviving what we used to have called that parent thing. So the idea is to begin with putting out a lot more supportive, informative content for parents out there,
Okay.
and in different forms, right? So we're also working on building a podcast of our own. We send out newsletters almost every month to different age groups of parents of children of different age groups, right? Which is a lot more information. It's just information and science and tips on parenting that
Okay.
goes out. It could be something as basic as a recipe for the winters to
Sure.
something about what does a 3 to 4 year old really need, and how do you make that happen? How do you provide that environment at home? So it could be a whole range in between, book recommendations, you name it. So
Okay.
that's one piece. But in addition to that, what we're doing is a lot more supporting parents, right? So we have a child psychologist who works with us with 20 years of experience. She leads all of the parent engagement from that standpoint. So there is counseling that we provide. What many people outside don't know is all parents at Clay have access to counseling services. So
Oh.
if they have challenges that they're
Mm.
grappling, people bring their relationship problems as well to her,
Yeah, I can
right? And
understand.
there's a lot of that support that they bank on. Now, a lot of these things we've not gone to town and spoken about, and that's what I'd like to change.
Actually, I would think your counselor would be able to spot some of these markers in the child and tell what the situations are
Exactly.
at
Yeah.
homes as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. In addition to that, we were talking about parents and what we're doing digitally, right? We're also looking at putting out a lot more content that supports them. So if you go to our blogs, you will hear and you will see a lot of content around what parents can do at different stages of life, what
Sure.
different problems are you seeing. So something as basic as, you're cooped at home during summers, what do you want to do with your child, what are
Mm.
different activities that you can do, it's very fundamental to what does bullying in this age look like, right? In each of these areas, to really make parenting understood and easy for parents.
And also express yourself or establish yourself as a thought leader then,
Yes,
as
exactly.
the source of assurance for the parents that we've already got all of this covered. How often does communication go out to parents, and where can they access that parent thing?
So today, parents who are clay parents, right?
Yeah.
Clay families get a lot of this off the app. We have
Okay,
an
you
app, and
have
we're
an
in the
app.
process of
Mm.
really redoing that as well. So in the next couple of months, there'll be a lot more, I would say, lot more content that I'm talking about. So that parent thing goes on to the app in
Okay.
a far more structured fashion. There is, of course, our blog, which has a lot of this. Socials are there.
Mm.
But in addition to that, the comms that go out to parents, we send out monthly newsletters, which are more generic about what's happening at Clay, and like I said, all of the science and early childhood bits. There is
Sure.
also something that goes specifically to the class that their children are in. So if there's a program newsletter for K1, K2, junior toddler, senior toddler, each of them gets their own program newsletters. Parents get work samples that are sent home. Parents get updates about their child, like visual updates, pictures, etc., almost on a daily basis.
Oh,
So
very
the app
nice.
tells them what the child has been fed. For the younger ones, it's the diaper change, all of those things. So, and the other bit is that every center it gives parents live CCTV access,
Okay.
which not everybody in this space does, right? So parents are also assured. Again, like I said, some of my colleagues were like, the first 4 5 days I did it. After that, I don't even need to bother because I know what's happening. I don't. So it's a form of reassurance that your child is in great hands and what they're up to.
Absolutely. But what also is coming across to me that your relationship and managing the relationship with the parents is extremely important to Clay. So then do you market on the basis of relationship marketing, or you're still spending a lot on performance marketing paid to get eyeballs in?
We do a good amount of perf as well.
You
There
do.
is that.
Mm.
But we're also looking at making that switch to relationship marketing because we sit on a lot of excellent testimonials that come our way
Mm.
almost on a
Mm.
daily basis, right? Like every time I pick up my phone, there is a parent who's really gone to town talking about how happy they
How
are with the
nice.
experience. And that's really heartening for us and for our staff at centers, right? So the endeavor is to now get a little bit more stronger on relationship
Mm.
marketing because we've not had the tech to support a lot of this. That's something that we finally got in place. So
Okay.
this year, like I said, I keep saying this year because I'm in April and I have an offsite coming on this week where we're setting the theme for the year with my team. So I'm probably in that headspace. But that's another thing we want to build. There is a lot of digital and performance as well,
Mm.
but we are also working very hard on building more awareness for the category and what, like I mentioned earlier, right? What
Yeah.
should parents really look for? So there's digital effort going in that direction as well, not necessarily lead gen, not necessarily brand building, but more awareness building.
What's become hygiene factors in your category? And what is given as a, I mean, what's a given and you don't need to talk about it anymore in how you reach out?
Basic safety measures are sort of more or
Mm.
less, baby
Mm.
proofed or child proofed spaces are more or less hygiene. You know, meals that are nutritious, I think, are more or less hygiene. So when I say hygiene, I don't mean every preschool, but I mean like the players of repute in this space have more made this hygiene, right? What people talk about is to some degree some level of access to what the child is doing visually. You can see what's happening. May
Mm.
not be live, maybe deferred, maybe some
Sure.
parts, not to the degree that we are, but that some part of that has become hygiene. Teacher child ratios, everybody seems to
Yeah,
talk
they.
about it,
Mhm.
but
I'm
again,
sure they will.
I don't know how much of adherence is in place, but yeah. So some of these are hygiene now. Really, it's also about, like I said, right? Till you don't know what you want to ask for, you never get the answers you should get,
Yes.
right? And that's where I think we need to help parents understand that these are a given. In this space, this is the bare minimum you should ask for your child.
You
I mean,
should.
if it's not
Yes.
there, you have a bigger problem. It's
Sure.
really about once the child is in this space, yes, it is safe and all of that, but what's really stimulating them? What are they learning? How is it making them a better, stronger human? How are you preparing them to be a happier, stronger, healthier adult? Really, it's
Sure.
that we work on.
Very, very nice. It's very heartening to hear actually all of this. One of my last few areas that the couple of last few things that I want to delve into is hyperlocal, and how much of hyperlocal do you consider when you are marketing, given the fact that you're 170 across the country. Also share with me a few examples of how the mothers, how the parents change across the country, or what are the needs that differ today.
Sure. It's a very interesting question because a lot changes from, I wouldn't even say city to city, right? Within different pockets of a city, also a lot
Hmm.
sometimes changes, right? It's the kind of parents, the kind of socioeconomic background they come from, therefore their expectations or their definition of what their child should get.
What
I'll give
should
an
be?
example of
Yeah.
cities, right? For instance, Jaipur and I think a little bit of some of the Gurgaon centers as well. Parents came back saying that, but you're not teaching my child to write the alphabet this early, but other schools are, and we need you to do that. So we made a few tweaks which are very specific to that location, that region, right? Similarly, for example, there is this around Saraswati Puja, Pujo, Durga Puja, around that time. What is in the south, especially, there's something known as Aksharabhyasam, right?
Mm.
Where the child is taught to sort of hold a chalk or whatever, even with
Writing
the finger,
instrument.
just write. Even
Okay.
some of these do writing instruments, some just use like a tray of rice and have the child use their
Okay.
finger. So
Okay.
essentially introducing learning to the child, right?
Okay.
So some of these are big events, especially in the south. So puja is Saraswati Puja is probably bigger in a
East.
bit of the north and the east,
Mm.
especially the east, but this is great. So what we do is in Chennai, Coimbatore, Bangalore, and to some degree in Hyderabad as well, we do events which are localized at our centers. We actually have last year, like the October we just went by, we've had people bring traditional, pull in traditional wear on the outside, and just, from a safety standpoint, show children what these cultural contexts look like. We've done this whole thing in the center where we've had traditional instruments, musical instruments played. The people come dressed in the whole attire and
Very
things
nice.
like that. And what we do is one of our which has now become kind of a signature event, is called Little Folk Festival. So across the country, what is regional folk to that, unique to that region, is being introduced. For instance, we would do like a Bhangra theme where the food is that. So we talk to children about what the importance of, say, a harvest festival is around this time. How do different cultures celebrate it? So there are activities that the children are doing, which are representative of various things. So
And then
these
you
are
market these?
we do. So Little Folk Festival is a marketed event where we have parents, not just Clay parents, come in, but people can. It's a ticketed event with a very low entry price point. But people can, come and bring their children and participate in this in the
Tell me
centers.
about regional flavors to your marketing. Are you using
So
language specific?
we just started testing a campaign out because we have centers in Ahmedabad and Baroda,
Uh-huh.
and we felt that somewhere bringing in a bit of that regional flavor would help, and so we started to try bilingual campaigns. So we're
Ah,
doing a little bit of
nice.
Gujarati in the copy, in the visuals we're bringing in a little bit more. So around Uttarayan we do Uttarayan led campaigns. In
Okay.
Uttarayan, for instance, this year we actually did like a kite distribution thing.
Sweet.
At these outside events, we've done kites which had a little bit of the brand's touch and our key messages, etc. So we've done that. We do a lot of, so when I coming back to the original question, hyperlocal, we do a lot in terms of physically doing events which are at our center. So for me, the
Okay.
primary objective is to bring a parent to experience what happens inside our schools,
Sure.
right? Once that's happened, that's half the job done, or actually most of the
So
job done.
basically getting them to the center.
Getting them to the center.
Yeah.
So these events help us do that. Participating in again local events helps us. For instance, Kukduku Art Fest just got over, and we were there because we knew parents and children. It's a great spot for them to come. So that's a lot of what we do in terms of hyperlocal. In terms of the digital hyperlocal, what we are now exploring is a few things. While we do SEO oriented stuff, we are evaluating. Like we've worked with something on a local Falcon to give up
Mm-hmm.
to show up in listings organically. We're exploring something known as Dash Clock, which is again fairly hyper local, and testing that out this month with about 30, 40 of our centers. So some of these tools even I'm learning as
I'd
we
love
go.
to know, what you pick up after that, whether your
Absolutely, yeah,
visibility
yeah.
has increased post
Yeah. I'm
that.
also waiting to see how that's going to pan out because these are a few things that we're trying new. I mean, you know this as much as I do about how every day the tools that are available to us as
Every day.
digital marketers are
Yes,
changing, right?
it's very
There is
fast.
that temptation to hop on to the next best thing, but then it also means pulling out marketing dollars from something else. So it's a
Of
trade off we
course.
live every day as marketers. So
Yes.
it's fun times.
Okay, tell me whether something that you've actually tried to do has flopped or didn't do as you expected it to. I'm really curious about that.
Oh yeah. So around this Vidyaram, like we do this campaign every year. This year I said, okay, let's make it a little bit more cultural and local.
Hmm.
So I said, since we know the states and the cities that this campaign is big in, we said let's do a digital event. So more like an awareness building plus at some point top of funnel lead gen event. And we did like three languages, multiple, three different storytellers, so different slots through a day. We hyped the whole day to be we call it tiny tales and traditions,
Okay.
and we did a decent amount of digital. We put our digital muscle behind it. I was super excited because I felt, parents would want their children to get in touch with their cultural roots, with the language, because that's something I see with a lot of parents. They're like, oh, you know what, I speak to my child in my mother tongue, but they respond in English or maybe sometimes in another language which they're growing up listening to. Not necessarily that. So we were like, bilingual stories might be a great way to do this. So let's do that. And I was excited about it. My team got excited about it, but that just didn't work.
Where did
And
you try it?
we tried it virtually and then we did it in centers. So the interesting piece is what we tried virtually didn't work. What we did in centers went out beautifully. So clearly, I mean, the one core insight for me was parents want physical experiences for their children. Doing digital events, which the way we envision it is parent child, not just child, and we're very screen free in that sense. So in our centers, you won't see a screen. But for this, in my idea was that parents who, on a Saturday would say, hey, listen, there's a story that is in Telugu and English, so I can also talk my child through this. There is puppets that the
Oh, you did
storyteller
so
is
much.
using. We did all of that, but that just didn't work. But in centers, it worked beautifully. The children went back
And it was
thrilled.
across India or few
It was
south?
in the south.
South,
Yeah,
you
it was
said,
in the
yes.
south centers, and yeah. So that for me, the insight was clearly that okay, when you want to do digital events, I think anything that involves the child and parent is probably not
And not a screen,
working.
possibly, because they're not yet ready to introduce the
Yeah,
children
funnily because
to so
where
much.
this came from was for me during the pandemic. This worked beautifully for us, right? It worked really well. Clearly, people are going back to. I mean, we knew this all along. It was writing on the wall. I don't know why I chose to ignore it and tested it, but parents want to go back to in-person experiences, take their children
Interesting. Yes,
out
I
and
see a
do
lot of
things.
that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
More connected to the
So
physical world than the digital
absolutely,
world.
yeah. For me, this was okay. It's a Saturday, so maybe they wouldn't mind doing it, but yeah, it didn't work. So
Okay. But I have an interesting section now, which is called Take Five. These
okay,
are five questions and your take on those, very quick ones.
all right.
If your brand had to survive being on WhatsApp, a WhatsApp community of parents, and create a winsome presence for yourself, what's the kind of tone that you would use?
Hmm. I think we'd have to balance between like a sage and a teacher kind of a tone because you want the voice of trust, but
Yes.
you also don't want to get too preachy. So it's a fine balance between being that calm sage presence,
And
so that you ensure there is no, you've got things under control. People don't
sure.
see you as this, and yet also keep that voice of trust and teacher. saying that I know what I'm saying. This comes from a place of knowledge, information, and
Wisdom,
science and wisdom. So stay with that.
balance. Very good. What is something that you never thought that you'd market until you came to the world of preschool marketing?
Okay, that's a tough one. Can I extend that to not preschool but early years?
Okay,
Because
early years. Let's
early
go.
years, yeah, okay. I think in the pandemic, right, we had to market Hindi, learning Hindi for NRI kids. Okay.
Okay.
And surprisingly, it did brilliantly well, all right. The word of mouth on it went through the roof. We were getting referrals every single day.
How lovely.
Yeah, and I never thought of that. I never thought of that. So my co-founder built all of the content around it, and we went to town talking about it. And but I had not in my entire life thought I would be doing that. So
And one word that you'd eradicate from the world of preschool marketing, if you had a chance?
there are so many of them, but I think one would be a whole child approach.
Ah,
We use it also, but I'm kind of done with it now. I think everybody's talking about
interesting.
a whole child. Nobody knows what they mean when they say whole child.
I
So
can totally relate to that. I can totally understand. Okay, pitch Clay in 6 words and
mhm.
make it sound like a child is pitching. What are 6 simple words that a child would use to pitch Clay?
Hmm. I think the child will call it my happy place. I would love for them to call it that, and I think they would. That less than six. Do I have to take it to six?
Okay, fair enough. We'll grant you that. And what's the one parenting trend you secretly wish disappeared? What do parents do that you secretly?
AI and Google. I think
Ah,
getting
yes.
info off that to say what my child should be learning, and I think this whole world of over information, right? Like I've met a few parents who've said things like, my it's a very interesting anecdote, and I can't take names, so I won't. But someone said that you should let my child doesn't want to take a nap in the afternoon, and you should let my child not nap because you're taking away the right of light from them because you're keeping them in a
Ah,
dark room.
see that
And I'm
now.
like, hold
Yeah.
on, you're sending them to a preschool because you want them to understand the importance of routines, get into the idea of adjusting in a this thing. So some of these are information people pick off like bits and pieces of articles they might have read or courses they might have done and bring that and regurgitate it to say this is how parenting should be or this is how early years should be. So it's hard.
Shireen, this has been such a treat listening to you because we've uncovered so many ideas that you've, used and some successfully, some not so successfully. I'm just wondering, is there a branding myth that you want to debunk for our listeners today? And what is it that marketers should stop doing or can do more of?
Yeah, I think one thing I've heard consistently over the last many years in my various roles, right, as founder, as corporate employee, and now back as corporate employee as well, is everybody assumes digital marketing is the only marketing that should exist, does exist, right? People have lost the art of brand building and lost the comprehension of why that is important, right? And I wish people marketers would make a people like you and I would do a better
Mm,
job of bringing people back to the awareness that it is not just lead gen or perf or just digital presence.
yeah.
There is a reason. It's very category dependent, nature of business dependent, whether it's a service business. So there are so
Yes.
many. There is a nuance to it, and there's a reason there's a nuance to it. And I wish the world would stop thinking digital marketing is the end all of every problems and lead gen is the only thing that marketing does. I really wish people would stop doing that.
Actually, there is so much to be done at every touch point in the value chain.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there's so
Yeah.
much you can deliver. And in my personal experience, I feel, I don't know where referrals come from. They just come.
They just come
That's you've got to
exactly.
keep the whole value chain covered very well. So
Totally. I see that all the time, right? When you have people walking in, it's very hard for them to remember one touch point where they saw the business or heard of the brand,
yes,
right? They will tick whatever they last remember. That does not mean that that's just that channel is working. There is a reason we've always said
yes,
360 degrees, and it's how human nature works. Really, marketing is all about understanding your consumer and really deploying that understanding into your various touch points, right? And that is not just digital. The world is not living off the internet alone. There is
yes.
We consume all the time, knowingly, unknowingly. through multiple senses. So really
Absolutely.
living, as a brand, being able to deliver at those various touch points is really what I think all of us should focus on. And I wish the world would stop going so berserk about digital. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Shireen,
Mhm.
for reinforcing that. I have learned so much this session talking to you, and thanks for being here with us. To our listeners, I hope that was as enjoyable as insightful to you as it was to me. If you've enjoyed this conversation, we have more brilliant minds coming on the podcast. Please follow Iconic Brand Stories on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we are on all the channels. Stay tuned for more. Until then, bye bye.